All through my life, I've had death follow me. £250,000 worth of drugs on tick. I would always insist on knowing where they lived, where their families lived.
Have you used a sawn-off shotgun?
Well, I knew that if you shot below the knee, it wasn't attempted murder. You know I'm going to find you. I know where you are. So they were dealing with the Medellin cartel, Pablo Escobar's cartel, and it was big news. It was on ITV News, BBC News. I mean, it was massive. Brought in at least 85 kilos of cocaine.
How long was it before you said, right, I need to escape?
Oh, a bad day. We talked about doing a helicopter lift off the roof, blowing the wall with an RPG, but we opted to dig a tunnel. I see this idea and this method, and I'm like, that is the future of cocaine trafficking. This is what I ended up doing, this process. This is how I ended up bringing cocaine into the country.
Okay.
So...
Pete, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Dodge.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, mate. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah.
Which is great. Let's roll all the way back. Where did you grow up, and how did you go from university student to international drug smuggler?
It was it was a long road, and it was a road that you probably followed a little bit as well. So I was born in Stroud in 1976, and Stroud's always been a bit of a hippie sort of druggy sort of town. Do you know what I mean? And just started getting involved with the illegal rave scene when I was about 13, something like that. But it was end of the 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
My parents divorced when I was 10, and my mum got together with one of my dad's good friends, and his two sons were both older than me, and the eldest was was a DJ in the illegal rave scene, quite a bit older than me. And they were also doing other bits and pieces, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, I was then the sort of youngest of the three, wanted to emulate what they were doing. And it was just, it was just the scene, wasn't it, at the time?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, all the illegal raves and all the rest of it. So the first one I ever went to was in Stroud, in my hometown, in an old Great Mills there. And Mickey Finn turned up in the morning.
Quality.
Yeah. So my stepbrothers had helped put it on. One of them, the older one, DJ'd there. And there were loads of DJs turned up, thousands of people. And growing up, there wasn't like a great deal of money in the family at home. My dad was a builder. My mum was a homemaker. But then they divorced, like I said, when I was 10. So... you know, I sort of wanted to try and generate a bit of money. Always been a bit, very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And just saw drugs as an easy way of making money because, started going to these parties, suddenly realised that everybody there was doing drugs. The law wasn't getting involved. They wouldn't even come into the parties. They just set a cordon up around the area and like try and stop people getting to it if they could, but they weren't really bothered.
What drugs are we talking here? Are we talking E's?
This is ecstasy. This is it was all the party drugs. So it started off dealing hash.
Yeah.
You know, squidgy black, pollen, red seal.
Moroccan black.
Yeah, all of those old. Yeah, so
Turkish black. Yeah.
Yeah, all the old.
Yeah.
And then that quite quickly went to ecstasy. Obviously at the weekends, amphetamines. A lot of LSD, a little bit later on. It was, mainly those four. And
how old were you roughly when you started serving up properly?
So the thing is, my dad smoked hash when I was growing up. I didn't really know what was going on, but used to have all these parties going on at home and stuff, and being a kid.
Yeah.
I first got stoned when I was 4.
Yeah.
I accidentally got fed a piece of hash cake. Chocolate cake, which my mum didn't realise had loads of hash in it. I actually remember the day being all of it like, ooh, it's all a bit weird. So finished at school in Tetbury, and then I moved to Cirencester College, right next to the agricultural college, to do my A-levels. And in the second year, obviously I meet a whole new bunch of people there, start dealing to them. So it's all, the network's expanding, the amounts of drugs are expanding. So by this point, I'm dealing easily a couple of thousand trips a week at LSD. So I get down to university. My dad drops me off at the halls of residence, and I quite quickly realised that no one knows where to get any drugs.
Yeah,
and a lot of students, first time away from home,
got money.
Yeah, they want to experiment.
Yeah.
How it goes. Yeah. So they're all looking for drugs. They're all running around like a headless chicken, not knowing where to get it. And of course, I know where to get loads of drugs. So stupidly, I make a phone call back to Stroud, to the dealers I know.
What university were you at?
Cardiff.
Cardiff, okay.
Yeah, got 4 offers from different unis. I got offered from Liverpool, a place at Liverpool, Bradford, Southampton, and Cardiff. And basically opted on Cardiff because it was close to home. And by this point, my mum had started drinking really heavily. She was like a proper full-on alcoholic, and would have like sort of psychotic episodes when she drank. So I wanted to be near to home so I could get back in a hurry if I needed to. I had a younger sister, 4 years younger, so I was sort of leaving her behind to deal with all this. So, I wanted to be sort of close to hand if needed to be. So start dealing again to the students in Cardiff, go back to Stroud, get a parcel of drugs, all the same drugs again, party drugs. Go back down to Cardiff, sell it in literally the first day. So turn around, go back. This is on the train. Go back to Stroud, get more, come back down. And it was around this time that somebody asked me for coke. And I'd never really dealt with coke before. Well, I hadn't dealt with coke before. I hadn't really done it. It was seen as a drug for the rich, and it was expensive at the time. And it just wasn't my thing. I'd seen people doing it, and they would get either all paranoid or they'd shut down. And, I was into all the party scene. But I could see that there was a lot of money in it. So all the dealing carries on at uni, and it's really building up. And like I said, the guy in Stroud had introduced me to his dealer, who was a guy from near Oxford, ex-musician, had a couple of top 10 hits, knew people like Johnny and Whistle from The Who. He was involved with that sort of level of music, So started traveling out to London with him, meeting his people. It was all done on trust. Yep. So, you didn't get introduced to someone unless you were vouched for and trusted. So started going out to London, like I say, meeting his guys, bringing back a key or two at a time, depending what I was asked for.
So a kilo of coke back then, what, 30 grand?
No, it was
less?
24, 25. I was getting it at a really good price.
Yeah.
And the reason for that being was I didn't realise at the time, but I was actually getting it from the people that were bringing it into the country.
Okay.
Done a bit of research on it not long ago, and because they all got nicked, and it turned out it was a guy called Brendan Bryan Wright.
Yeah.
Nicknamed the Milkman because he always delivered
on time.
Yeah. And they were bringing in a ton and a half at a time. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you were getting it pretty pure then. It wasn't cut before it got to you.
That's the thing. Okay. It was absolutely pure.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd open up the kilo bricks, and they would have the most beautiful stamp on them because they were getting it from Bolivia, Peru, absolute pure cocaine, and an unbeatable price because I was literally one step down from the people the boss basically.
How did you feel at the time? I'm looking in here thinking, young 19, 20-year-old,
I was just living on adrenaline.
That's what I mean. Not like a wheeler dealer geezer. You've got entrepreneurial spirit. You got that sort of university vibe going in and going, you know what? I'm actually one step down from the top dogs here.
But I didn't really realise that at the time. Okay. And obviously there's certain questions you don't ask when you do. I didn't really want to know where it was coming from.
But people must have trusted you and also liked you because you're not an aggressive person. You're not a person who's going, well, if you stitch me up, you're going to get... It's actually like, it is what it is. I'm happy to buy off you at 24s and 25s?
Well, I've been given this on credit.
Yeah. Was it all credit?
Yeah. Sometimes I was coming away from London with like £250,000 worth of drugs on tick. You know, big rucksack.
Yeah.
What hold all full. And I mean, the amounts of hash, particularly, at one point there was a guy down in South Wales. What happened was the local dealers. So I'm getting into the local dealers in Cardiff, and I said to them to just, you know, grow the market even bigger. I said, look, would any of your previous suppliers be up for having a meeting with me to see if I can supply them? A few of them said, look, we don't think they take too kindly to you, you know, stepping on their ground. But others said, yeah, fine, come and meet and we'll set up the meetings. So I started meeting people all across the M4 corridor, all across South Wales, Swansea, Port Talbot, up in the Rhondda Valleys, all of, you know, like the main dealers, like, you know, people like yourself that running the clubs, the doorman, you know, all voided up, all, you know, all that world.
Yeah.
So
that's a very different world for you.
Yeah, but I was.
Did you slot in? Did you feel like you slotted in perfectly fine with that world?
Yeah, I was just like, you know, because I've always been able to get on with anyone.
Yeah,
which
is a gift.
Yeah, like literally anyone, from the lowest person on the street,
to the CEO, to president, whoever,
to meeting presidents.
Yeah.
Literally, you know, in Ecuador. I'll come on to that later. You know, so. Yeah, that was a sort of natural talent and being able to being quite diplomatic.
Yeah.
So started supplying these guys, and it reached a point where, you know, after probably I'd say about 2 or 3 years, there was one particular guy who started asking for a ton of hash every 10 days to 2 weeks. So. You know, it got to that level. I mean, I'm you know,
it's
as
a
long.
That's a lot.
That's
of
1,000 kilos.
Yeah.
And I'm
what sort of money are we talking for a ton of hash?
God, roughly. Going back, it was quite cheap. It was coming to us at about 200 or 300 quid a kilo.
Right. Okay.
So what was that?
$250,000.
Around
300
that. Yeah, it was around that. It was.
Wow.
Yeah. But the money in it was rubbish. I mean, we would have been making, I think it was about 10 or 20 grand on it, and shifting
for all that risk and all that weight.
It was like a transit run full. I mean, I was going up to London, up to Blackheath, you know, where there used to be a burger bar there that burnt down, and I would literally meet a guy there, and we would back the vans up, you know, door to door, back door to door, and just chuck boxes and boxes of hash across, and I'd just drive back down the M4. And, you know, delivering along the way down to Bristol, Cardiff, you know. Always did all of it myself because, you know, it was on credit and I didn't really want to take the risk of you know, entrusting other people this sort of amount of money, you know. It was, you know.
Yeah.
I'd be
you'd lose your life, of course.
Exactly. Obviously.
Even whether it's credit or not credit, if something goes on and you're going to lose £250,000 of someone else's money, it's on your shoulders, right?
Yeah. And you know, problems did start occurring because I'm not exactly you know, the biggest person. I'm not a gangster type, but I did employ quite a lot of psychological tactics because people knew where the drugs were coming from. They knew it was coming from London. They knew that I was obviously involved with some pretty heavy people up there. You know, so I would say to people, you know, if you mess about, people are going to come down from London and you're going to have a serious problem. Yeah. I would always insist on knowing where they lived, where their families lived, you know, so I'd have a bit of control over it. But problems did start occurring where I'd be giving out tick as well.
Yeah.
So then I'm in debt and I'm juggling, trying to deal more. You know, it just becomes a cycle where you're having to sell more to offset the losses and whatnot. But I was making money.
Were you making proper money?
It did, it started to become that way.
Yeah. What sort of rough sums are we talking? Do you think you were making?
I mean, at that point, I remember in a couple of hours making 10 grand, 20 grand.
Okay.
You know, bringing 3 or 4 keys back down from London to one guy in the Forest of Dean, cut it a little bit. I only like putting 1 or 2 ounces into it, so you could hardly tell because it was so pure. But doing that's an extra couple of ounces, and it was like about £1,000 an ounce then.
Did you ever have the fear of cutting it too much, that people who you're serving up to going, hold on a minute, this isn't what you said it was?
Yeah. So I mean, generally, I didn't cut it because I knew that keeping it pure,
it'd get you more business.
Yeah.
Because
obviously, if you got the best product at the best price, you can't go wrong, really, can you? It's a win-win.
Yeah.
So, it was only that occasion was not long again before Christmas, and the demand was so strong that I knew I could get away with it. So I think he did complain, though. I do have a vague memory, but he's dead now, unfortunately. But anyway, so the amounts have all ballooned.
Did it ever come on top?
The paranoia is growing as well. I got robbed a couple of times.
How?
There was one occasion, went down to Chiswick. I dropped out of university in my second year because of all the stress of it all, trying to do all the dealing. It was becoming really stressful. And also I'd had a lot of people die around me by this point. By the age of 20, I'd seen 8 people actually die in front of me from a couple of drug overdoses, but mainly from car accidents, heart attacks that I'd happened across. But I actually saw 8 people pass away. 8? In
front of your eyes?
In front of my eyes.
My God.
Not at the same time,
yeah, obviously. No, of course
not. But I mean, that's a lot. That's not normal.
No, it's not.
And all through my life, I've had death follow me.
Okay.
My nickname, in fact, my mate, my mate in Wales that called me, he's Posh.
Yeah, Posh. Yeah.
Yeah. Also called me, what did he think of it? What did he call me? I forgot what he called me. What's the Grim Peter.
Oh, Grim.
Instead of the Grim Reaper.
Oh, yeah.
He used to call me Grim Peter because he said, because literally every month someone would die around me, or more frequently. My stepbrother killed himself. And in the same month, his cousin, not the DJ, this is my dad's partner, her son killed himself. And then his cousin did the same thing in the same month, same year, November. So one at the beginning, one at the end. That's when I was about, I'd left uni by then. I was probably about 22, 23. I was at college, sixth form college. I had a girlfriend killed then, and another friend coming out of a legal rave in the morning in the month of May. So I had a lot of people dying around me. First best friend died when I was 14, and it just carried on.
Were you using while serving up as well? Were you smoking gear? Were you taking acid? Were you taking? Ease?
I did do quite a lot of acid.
I would never have guessed.
Because I was cutting it up and whatnot. But yeah, my memory's not the best. But going to parties, I would do these. But I did kind of like to stay in control, and I stopped smoking hash because I found it started to make me paranoid. I think that was after doing all the hashes, to be honest.
So how did it grow then? What people you were dealing with? Were you dealing with serious families in London?
Yeah, basically what happened was in 1998, the group that we've been dealing with, this Brian Brendan, right, and his crew, they all got nicked. Me and the guy from Oxford had driven up to London, and we were waiting at Marble Arch. We had a system whereby we were using pagers back in the day when pagers were the thing. Yeah. So we go to a phone box, and we page him with the number of our telephone box that we were in or waiting by. And he would go to a telephone box, and we'd do a box-to-box call to try and evade any sort of, eavesdropping or whatever, and to arrange the meet. So we'd done that, and he said, meet me at Marble Arch, and we were collecting somewhere between 3 and 5 kilos of coke. It was a Friday evening. So we drive up to London. Everything's looking all right, nothing untoward. And We get to Marble Arch, page him again to let him know that we're there. He's on the way to us. And then we're just sat there waiting. And we start paging him again, and we're getting no response. And we're like, and I start getting a funny feeling. And I said to the guy that I'm with from Oxford, I said, look, something's wrong. I think we should leave. So he says, oh, let's look, just wait a little bit longer. He'll definitely come. I said, look, let's go. So anyway, we ended up waiting a bit. Gave up in the end. Drove back to Oxford. I stayed at his because it was so late by the time we got there. And I think it was either the next day or the day after we found out that he'd been arrested half a mile from reaching us by the local police with 29 kilos of coke in the boot of his car. And what had happened was he'd been dealing with it was either Lebanese or Libyan diplomat who'd been nicked by the local police because he'd obviously been putting it out or doing whatever he'd been doing. And they'd put pressure on him to give up the dealer. So he'd given up the guy that we were getting it from, called Kevin. So he had taken what was originally 30 kilos of coke back to Kevin and just basically thrown it at him. He was now 29 and gone, look, I can't deal with this, something's happened, I've got to leave the country. I don't know whatever bullshit he told him. So hence the fact Kevin had 29 kilos of coke in the boot of his car on a Friday night in London. I mean, it's not what you want to be driving around with, really. Anyway, he was, So we get stopped half a mile from reaching us, but without a shadow of a doubt, by this point, we were on the radar of the police. Because the local police, unbeknown to them, had stumbled upon a massive operation, a surveillance operation by, I think it was probably National Crime Agency or Soccer or whoever it was at the time. Yeah. And they had all of
secret organised crime agency, Soccer.
Whatever they So they had all this group under surveillance, and I'm sure we must have been on.
Good from you though, having that gut feeling to go get out.
Yeah, well, I mean, he'd already been arrested, but only half a mile from.
That's what I'm saying. But for you to get out, you knew.
So I think that was the beginning of my problems there, 1998.
Yeah.
Because 2 years later, I get properly arrested. So had all that lot having been taken out, and me by this point having dropped out of uni, I'd moved to Bristol because my girlfriend at the time was living in Bristol. I already knew a few of the dealers from Bristol, but quite quickly got introduced to some of the main dealers there as well, including an ex-armed robber who was involved with Brinksman, bullion robbery. Well, not involved with it, but John Palmer, Goldfinger.
Yeah.
He was from Bath.
Yeah.
So they melted down the gold somewhere near Bristol. And this ex-armed robber was involved with all that lot, knew the Richardsons, and, he was a proper old villain. And I started dealing to him. So when all this lot got nicked, I was a bit stuck for a contact for coke. So he introduced me to some of his people. And inadvertently, I ended up dealing with the Adams, North London firm, and another guy around in Erith who was getting it straight from a Colombian firm or office, as they call it. When they open up an operation in a country, in a city, the Colombians call it like a business. They open an office.
Yeah.
So
HQ.
Yeah. So they had an office in London. Yeah. So and this guy in Erith was getting straight off them. So again, I was pretty much near the source of where it was coming in. Oh, going back to these guys getting nicked in, the Marble Arch scenario. So he gets nicked with 29 kilos. And because of this big surveillance operation going on, it triggered a massive bust because, the game was up. So they swooped in and arrested everybody apart from me and the guy from Oxford. We narrowly escaped somehow. I don't know how. I suppose maybe we were just on the periphery of it. Yeah. But they arrested 14 people in London. They got 440 kilos in London and 660 on a fishing boat in Kerry or Cork, Southern Ireland anyway. And the way that they'd been bringing the coke in was on private yachts. So they were dealing with the tail end of the Medellin cartel, Pablo Escobar's cartel. He was dead by now.
Yeah.
But obviously the cartel had carried on. And they were chartering yachts, sailing out to the Caribbean or Cartagena, northern Colombia, getting the boat loaded with like a ton and a half, sailing it back, coopering it, which is a term where two boats meet out in sort of international waters and transfer the coke from one boat to another, normally to fishing boats, which is what they were doing, bringing it in through Southern Ireland and then by road into England. Sometimes they were just sailing straight to Portsmouth or Southampton Harbour and unloading. They actually apparently, and I remember reading about it, that somehow they missed a kilo of coke in one of their snatch places, and the owners of the yacht found the kilo of coke and obviously reported it to the police. And I think that may have been what started the whole surveillance operation on them. So anyway, they were gone, started dealing with all these other firms, and it all got quite heavy. I ended up splitting up with my girlfriend in Bristol that I was with at the time, got together with the sort of ex-girlfriend of a yardie that I was dealing with in Bristol. And he didn't take too kindly to it. So there were all sorts of shenanigans. Bristol car chases, me chasing it, because through a third party, he stole a kilo of coke off me.
Okay.
So there were all sorts of shenanigans.
How would you react if someone stole a lump off you? How would you react?
People did come down from London.
Okay, so you would make the call.
Yeah, made the call. People came down from London. I actually what happened was I actually lost 2 kilos in the space of 2 weeks. So they stole 1 kilo, and then that ex-armed robber messed up. Something happened, and he lost another. So I was suddenly in the hole for 2 kilos of coke.
Which is the equivalent of what, 50 grand?
No, at the time it was about 60 by this point.
Grand, okay.
Yeah, somewhere around that. Because it was, I think by that point it was like 28 grand.
Yeah, okay.
So I had about 30 grand in the bank at the time, so I paid one off straight away. Driving around the Range Rover, so I put that up as collateral. But the start, there were all sorts of things.
How messy did it get in Bristol at that time?
It got pretty messy. There was basically, because these guys knew I was coming for all of them, because I knew where they lived. I found out where the guy who had actually done the robbery, the third party, I found out where his family were in Yates, found out where his father's hardware shop was. They were quite a well-known family in Yates. So we went and visited the father, and said, look, we found out where the son was living, plotted up on his house with a Bren gun.
Yeah. With a what gun?
Bren gun.
Go on.
This is a funny story. So I phoned up a friend in Newport, and I said, look, we've got a problem in Bristol. Can you get me a gun? And he said, yeah, no problem. He goes, I can't do the accent, but he goes, oh, I'm not going to do it because that sounds stupid. But he goes, yeah, I've got a gun for you, but it's a Bren gun. And I said, I don't need a Bren gun. I'll cut the house in half. Can you imagine plotting? Because there were woods across it was out in the countryside near Yates where this kid was living. Because he thought he was safe there, but we found him straight away. And I said, no, like a handgun will do, not a Bren gun. I don't want to cut the house in half. So I ended up getting a sawn-off shotgun off somebody. And
how did you feel, you holding a sawn-off shotgun?
I'd always been into guns when I was a kid.
Okay.
I had air
so you were fine with it.
And like that.
Have you used
pistols.
a sawn-off shotgun?
Yeah. I was always into archery and stuff.
Where?
Well, I did just, obviously you have to test them to make sure they're good and stuff. But
would you go and front it, or would you have someone go and front it for you?
How do you mean?
Like someone due 30 grand. Would you make a phone call for the lads going, or would you go in front of a sawn-off shotgun yourself? We went in. Yeah, we found out where one of them was living in North Bristol. I can't remember the exact area, but we went and found the house, and we, went round the back with gun in the house upstairs. he wasn't in, unfortunately. But yeah.
Would you have used a gun?
Probably at the time. I wouldn't have shot. I knew the law. I knew that if you shot below the knee, it wasn't attempted murder. You know, above the knee, attempted murder. Below the knee, GBH. But it would have been more. I mean, if they'd come at me,
it would have been more than GBH if you're blowing someone's kneecaps off, right?
Probably a bit more. But I mean, it was more a threat.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
And how wound up were you at the time, knowing that someone's had 30 grand off you, robbed you 30 grand?
I was pretty pissed off.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, there were points where I ended up chasing them around Bristol and ramming them in the Range Rover that I was in. They were in an Audi, chasing them through Easton and St. Paul's, and you know. And it ended up with us calling a meeting in a restaurant called Brown's at the top of, it's in the Clifton area, Bristol, just on the Triangle. There's an area called the Triangle. And I didn't like the sound of it because there's a set of steps in front of this restaurant, and they said, wait on the steps at 1 o'clock. And I thought, well, I'm not waiting on those steps because they're going to try and kill me.
Course.
So there was a road.
Sitting duck, waiting.
Exactly. Yeah. So there was a road directly opposite where I found that I could park in. So I parked there, and I could see in the rear view mirror again what was going on. So this car, the Triangle, is a one-way system. So this car kept coming round and round. And I noticed on the second or third pass, a guy in the back with the window there, with a gun. And they were obviously going to kill me. So I phoned him up and I said, look, you know I'm going to find you. I know where you are. I've already been to your family's houses and found your father and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. You need to come and have this meeting and sort this out because it's going to end badly, one way or the other. So they said, all right, go into the restaurant. So I went into the restaurant, sat down, 2 of them turned up, like the 2 that actually had taken the gear. And so we're halfway through having a conversation about how to sort things out and how they were going to repay it and whatnot. And the Jamaican comes walking down, there's a road runs down the side of the restaurant. He comes walking down the side of the restaurant, sees us through the window, and I can see he's fired up. He comes into the restaurant, and it's lunchtime, it's packed. So I stand up, because I can see he's looking pretty aggressive. And he lifts his shirt up, and he's got a handgun down his, trying to be a gangster. So I've stood up, well, I'm already stood up, and I said, look, what are you going to do? Really, I'm speaking loudly so everyone in the restaurant can hear me. I said, what you're going to do is shoot me in front of all these witnesses, and the whole restaurant has gone absolutely dead quiet. I mean, you couldn't, you know the expression, you couldn't hear a pin drop. Yeah. And I said, and there's a camera there. I said, are you really that stupid? So they've all, we've had a bit of a set to, and they've all gone out of the restaurant. I've sat down, had a drink. The manager's come over and said, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I said, yeah, no problem. I said, there's the money for the food, and there's 100 quid. There's a tip. Yeah. And I've got out of there and gone.
Who were you with when you were in there? Did you have any lumps with you or anything? No, not at all. Just by yourself?
No, at that point I was on my own. Okay. I went into the meeting on my own.
How did they rob that kilo off you?
Well, basically, because it was through a third party, I stupidly trusted that third party.
Okay.
I shouldn't.
That third party passed it on to him. He's lost it through him and comes back to you. Okay.
Because I was going out with or getting together with his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend. He's got a third party involved who I knew. He knew I was already dealing with it, but he's obviously convinced them to do the robbery.
And he's got the ump as well because you're with his ex-missus.
Yeah, well, exactly, that's it.
Okay.
The armed robber, he just fucked up, and I don't know what happened with that key. But anyway, I'll come on to that later on. But he ended up getting shot in the stomach.
Who?
Over at the armed robber. That came later on. I was in prison.
What was his name?
Brian Revel. Yeah. So, because it's all getting so hectic, and it's, Bristol's just getting so full on.
Yeah.
I decided to move back up to the Stroud area take the girl that I'm now with, the Yardie's ex-girlfriend, with me. She had a daughter, so move back up to near Stroud, and rent a cottage out in the countryside. Make sure it's well out the way. Don't let anyone really know where I'm living, and just carry on dealing. Oh, by this point again, I've expanded up to Edinburgh, up to Scotland. Because a guy that I was supplying, he'd been taking hash up to Scotland, and he came back down and he said, look, I'm getting really good money for it. I was giving him a 9 bar for like, I don't know, a couple of £100.
Yeah.
He was selling it for £1,000.
£1,000, okay.
Up there.
Yeah.
And I said, obviously there's good money up in Scotland. Can you get me a contact up there that I can supply? And he said, yeah, give me some time and I'll see what I can do. So he went away, made a few phone calls, spoke to his people, and arranged a meet up in Dumfries and Galloway with a guy from Edinburgh who I was inadvertently supplying. And went and met him and started supplying him as well. Started doing like a monthly trip up to Edinburgh, or thereabouts, with normally a key or 2 of coke, loads of hash or weed, 10 or 20,000 pills, 5 or 10 keys of amphetamine, like a carload.
Yeah.
On one occasion, I actually, because I'd swap the cars around, I'd rent cars. I'd quite a few. I'd like a rolling contract with a rental company in Bristol, so I'd swap them every month, if not more frequently. Anyway, they give me this diesel Vauxhall Vectra at the time. And I didn't know it had a faulty fuel gauge. So I'm on the way up to Scotland, and I think it's Thornhill, where you come off the motorway there's a road that cuts across to Edinburgh. And I get to within about a mile of the junction and the services, and the car starts sputtering, and it's running out of fuel. Suddenly, and I'm in the 3rd lane, and I coast to a stop onto the hard shoulder, and I mean literally the car was full of drugs. The boot was full, and I had some luggage with me as well. Back seat, footwells, passenger seat, footwell, completely full. It was like drugs on wheels. So I'm like, oh shit, and this is all on tick. So I've literally run to the services, got some diesel. And I was thinking, because sometimes diesels won't start again if they run out of fuel because they get like an airlock. So I was praying. I was thinking, like, please don't let the police have turned up. So I get the diesel, and there was a field above the motorway there. So I got into the field. It was like a hill above the motorway. So I've walked along to see whether there's any police or anything down there. And luckily, no one had turned up. The car was still there, hazards on. So I've got the fuel in and managed to get to Edinburgh. But honestly, there were a few scenarios.
Fear, jeez.
Honestly,
how much in total drugs did you reckon you had in that car at that time?
That was quite a lot. That was about 200 grand's worth. Yeah.
Did you know the consequences if the old Bill would have given you a tug and gone right?
I wouldn't have stopped. I mean, I would, If in a situation like that, with a car full, I would not have been stopping. I've had a few car chases and got away. So you have to know how to drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't have stopped. I mean, I'd have got at least as clear as I could have done, and then either done a runner or whatever I had to do to get away from them.
You moving out into the countryside with the fear, were there people after you? Because you're building up this reputation. If you're like a reputation of hold on, if you're going to do me over any money, I'm going to make a phone call to London, and they're going to come down and
that guy, the Yardie in Bristol, because of the whole situation. It later transpired, and I didn't know this until I went to prison. I got nicked in 2000, the year 2000, May of 2000.
What for?
So, having moved back up to my local area, I carry on dealing. And like I say, in 1998, after all of that scenario with...
They're keeping an eye on you.
I think that's when they started the surveillance on me. So it was the day after my girlfriend's birthday, and by this point I'm living in a wing of a manor house that I'm renting for like £1,500 a month, paid 6 months cash rental up front to the estate agent. Beautiful place in a village called Slad. Have you heard of an author called Laurie Lee?
No.
Wrote a book called Cider with Rosie. Anyway, the house that I was renting is called Steambridge Court. It's mentioned in the book. It's a lovely village, beautiful. Had its own grounds, lake, wood. I mean, absolutely, living the life. And so it's the day after my girlfriend's birthday, and I go up to Store on the Wold to drop off some coke at a guy's house. I think it's about 3 ounces or something. And I've gone in the house, and I didn't know at the time that the house was under surveillance by the local police. And I've come out, and at this point I was in a big red transit van, so you couldn't really miss me. So, I've been in the house, had a cup of tea, done the deal. He's paid me what he's owed me, so I've driven off up the road towards Cheltenham to make the next drop. And I've got this briefcase with me, like I said. And I think I had about an ounce of coke in there and some pills and a few bits and bobs. I didn't have a great deal around me at the time. Luckily, well, I said didn't have a great deal, but it was enough. So we get about 7 miles up the road towards Cheltenham, and a marked police car comes screaming up behind me, blue lights come on. And I think, it's a routine traffic stop. I've got the sawn off in the back of the van as well, under a load of stuff. It's all broken down into component parts, because I knew that if it was broken down, at least it's not fireable. If you're carrying it loaded, it's
intent to use.
Exactly. Yeah. So they stop me and they go straight into the front of the van, straight for the briefcase. They know, and it's obvious that they knew I was carrying drugs. So they crowbarred it open. And they're going, look, there's loaded drugs, blah, 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 you're next. So they take me into Cheltenham Police Station, and I spend six days there. First 3, all throughout the 6 days, I'm no comment all the way through. First 3 days incommunicado, not allowed to make any phone calls, no visits, nothing. Third day comes, and I come out of the magistrate's court, because they had to take me out for custody time renewal. For some hearing. And up until that point, the police have been quite sort of amiable, talkative, weren't particularly hostile. This time I come out of the courtroom, and there's a picture of me online, long hair at the time, coming out the secure court van. I'm covering my face like this. So I come out of the courtroom, and there's a helicopter overhead. They got the ACAT van there with a cage in the back, police outriders, and I mean, it's like something's gone on, and it's really heavy now. They're not talking to me. They're all grim-faced. I was like, what the fuck's going on? So we get back to the police station. My lawyers, all solicitors, waiting for me there, and he says, right, you've got to make a comment on what's just happened, because if you don't, they're going to fuck you up. They're literally going to make your life hell. So I said, what's happened? Because I had no idea what's going on. And one of my friends, who was actually a professor of geology at Cardiff Uni, but lived in Stroud, I was dealing with him as well. He had an inkling that some guy in Stroud was an informant. So to try and find out whether or not he was an informant, on I think the first or second day of me being arrested, they've had my friend and somebody else have had a loud conversation in front of this suspected informant about how they were going to kill a police officer involved in the case. Now, in the manor house that I was living in, there was a stable blocks, and there was a special constable lived in one of the stable blocks. I had no problem with her. I used to play tennis with her. Her name was Penny. She had no idea what was going on. Yeah. I was very friendly with her. Do you know what I mean? There's no reason not to be. But my friend thought that she had instigated my arrest. So they made threats against her life. So they had to put her in a safe house.
Who made threats against her life?
My friend, the geology professor.
Okay.
So he had this loud conversation in front of this
okay.
informant to see what would happen. So sure enough, instead of helping me, he's made my situation 10 times worse.
Yeah.
But they've confirmed that this guy is obviously an informant because of what happened to me. So, you know, the police say, they get me in an interview room and they say, look, this is what's happened. One of our officers has been threatened with her life. We know you're responsible. We know that you're connected to the Adams family. We know you're really heavily connected. If you don't call this off, we're gonna fuck you up. Basically, we're gonna write you off. And I said, well, look, guys, I'm not being funny. You haven't given me a phone call since I've been here. I've been held incommunicado. I don't know what's going on. I've got no problems with this, with Penny, the special constable. I'll do what I can, but I've had, I haven't had any means of communication. So until I do, I can't do anything really, can I? So they were pretty pissed off, threatening a police officer with a murder it doesn't go down lightly, really. So after that, I get a visit from my family. They allow me to make a phone call. And
how long did you get?
So yeah, cutting a long story short.
How long did you get? How did you get banged up for?
The case. There's so much in my life.
Yeah.
And the story is, I could sit here for days going on. I was on remand for just under 2 years. Really? I was potential category A. I was on the book. Just to feed me, they would shut the whole wing down, put 2 officers in front of me, 2 behind, 2 in front, take me down to the servery to get my food, take me back to my cell, lock me in my cell. I was getting spun, cell searched every day, strip searched, all my calls recorded, all my letters opened and photocopies sent to the police. I mean, really full on. I was the only potential category A prisoner in the whole of Gloucester prison at the time. And the only one they'd had there in 15 years. And the longest remand prisoner they'd had in 15 years. I mean, it was just bonkers. And that went on for about a good 6 months to a year, like that sort of level of security around me. And, visits behind perspex, all with an officer literally sat on my lap, pretty much on the table with my family.
What was your attitude at the time then? You going, why has this come on top so much? Were you not thinking like they realised how much you've been dealing? They're keeping an eye on you longer than you thought.
Well, I mean, I thought it must have come on top after that bust in London and Marble Arch. How
long did you get in the end?
So I got 5 years.
You got 5 years,
which was lenient because I got caught with 5,000 pills.
Yeah.
Luckily, I say luckily because it had been 30,000 the day before.
Yeah.
The coke, I think it was, what was it? It was like 2 or 3 ounces. Or no, it might have been a bit more. Anyway, something like that. Day before, been 2 kilos.
Yeah.
It was in and out quite quick. Okay. I didn't like having it lying around too long. Obviously, they found a sawn-off shotgun, other bits and pieces. But the reason that they gave me 5 years, first offence, and I went guilty after 9 months. But my co-defendant had been released on bail. Well, in fact, he wasn't remanded initially anyway. But I think it was after 8 months or a year or something like that, him, the guy from Oxford that was my contact, and some other guy I didn't know, did something else, got caught, they all got remanded. So then the judge said, it's all one big thing, that I was involved in that as well, even though I was in prison. So lumped it all together, and they then got custody. They got released after a year on time limits again. So I was sat there waiting for this trial to come up in Bristol, and it was just ongoing. Sort of never-ending story, waiting for the
2
trial.
years on remand is a lot, right?
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah.
And I was starting to go a bit cuckoo. Do you know what I mean? Getting a bit sort of cabin fever. Do you know what I mean?
sat in Gloucester prison.
So what'd you do? You done your. What'd you do? 2.5 years of the 5.
Yeah,
So you done 2 years in remand. Did you only do 6 months then?
Well, it was just under 2 years on remand. So I'm in Parkhurst. I see an article in the Sunday Times.
Yeah.
So I used to get there once a week. See this article in the Sunday Times about the shipment of cocaine that's come into the country by container. It's in plastic garden patio sets, furniture, impregnated in it. So it's not in powder form. It's in the plastic.
What, the cocaine's actually in the plastic itself?
It's plastic. It's plastic. Yeah.
So how do you get the cocaine out of the plastic to?
This is what I ended up doing. This process. This is how I ended up bringing cocaine into the country.
Okay.
So I see this idea and this method, and I'm like, that is the future of cocaine trafficking, because bringing it in block form, unless you've got customs paid off in South America, which is easy, and at this end, which is really difficult, virtually impossible, then getting into the country, particularly with the advent of scanners and stuff, is virtually impossible. Yeah. Try and bring cocaine or anything, any drugs into Britain these days, it's just not going to happen. Unless you've got somebody paid off. It's the technology is so good. So I say to my codies, look, I've read this article about this form of impregnating drugs. I knew about putting it into clothing, but that was so basic, because you can see it crystallizes on the surface. So I said, look, if when we get out, if we decide to go back to dealing drugs, because I said there's no way we can go back to doing what we were doing before because we're too well known now. The police will be on us. We're going to be watched. The only thing I want to do is start bringing cocaine into the country, but I need a source in South America. I want to cut out all the middle people, go straight to South America, get the cocaine impregnated into rubber or plastic, turned into plastic or rubber, and start bringing it in, and then extract it here in Britain. Because of, there's no way it's going to get, it just seems like such a good way of bringing it in. So they were like, well, we don't really want to get involved again and whatnot. And I said, well, look, neither do I. So I got out after doing 2.5 years, got parole, kept my head down in prison, blah, blah, blah. Started painting and decorating business. That's all going okay, but I can see it's a daily grind. It's not really going anywhere, not really making, I'm used to having loads of money around me. I used to carry like at least $1,000 in my pocket just as loose change. So going from having all that money and that sort of lifestyle to having to work every day, working my ass off for not much money. And I'm just like, this is doing my head in. Started using a bit of coke at the weekends with my girlfriend. And I've got people ringing me up saying, do you want to do this? Do you want to be involved in that? Can you get us to this, that? It's all the old contacts are still there. They're ringing me up all the time. And I just keep saying, no. And then there was this one particular client I did some work for, painting and decorating, and they just pissed me off. I just had a bad day, bad week. And I just went, it was one of those days where you just go, fuck this. Yeah. It was a fuck it day. And I went, fuck this. And I made that phone call. And I picked up the phoned up the guy in Oxford. And whilst we were in prison, I said, if you get a phone call from me, you'll know why. We won't say anything on the phone. We're not going to talk about anything on the phone. It's all face to face. We're not going to say anything about anything on the phone at all, ever again. So when I met him, got out of the car, walked away from cars. We wouldn't talk inside buildings, cars. We wouldn't, we were really paranoid about it, because having gone through that experience of prison, learned a lot, whilst being in there and going through that experience. So, learned about the police and how they surveilled people and all their tactics and all of it, wised me up. So I said, look, can you get us a contact with a Colombian, Peruvian, Bolivian, anyone out there, or someone here who's got contacts there that can get us the coke and get it, made up into plastic or rubber,
and we'll think of something to put it in. There's a million things that come into the country daily that have got rubber or plastic in, and ours can be just one of them. We don't have to go massive. We can just start with 3 or 4 kilos or whatever. So he said, again, give us a couple of weeks. I'll go away, make a few phone calls to mates in London, and find someone. A couple of weeks goes by, he rings me up and he goes, look, come and see me. So I go and see him, and he says, I've found a Colombian and a Chilean in London who are selling coke, and they might be interested in importing it. Just rewinding the story a minute, whilst I was in prison at Gloucester, I met an Irish guy in there, a traveller, proper Irish guy though. And we're having a game of cards one night over a table like this on association, and we start talking about people we know in Bristol, and he starts getting really nervous, starts getting that white spume in the corner of his mouth and whatnot. And I stood up and I said, Billy, I said, what's going on, mate? Why are you getting so nervous? What's the problem? And he said, look, don't overreact, but I was meant to kill you. And I said, you what? I said, you better start talking right now. And he said, you know that Jamaican guy in Bristol? Because he knew him as well. It's a very small world. He said, the Jamaican had contracted us, the Irish, to blow you up, to put a car bomb under your Range Rover and blow you up. And I had no idea about this. So that's in 1998 that happened.
Wow.
And he said, we didn't do it. I'd never met him before, up until, meeting him in prison. He said, we didn't do it because we heard of you, and we knew that you were okay. We knew that you were a straight runner. And he said that we told the Jamaican to fuck off, basically, because he was in the wrong for stealing from you. Because they got quite strong morals, the Irish, and the travelling group and all that. He said, we would have done, had it been somebody else. And I shook his hand and I said, I owe you my life, Billy. And I tell you what, we stayed friends for years after that. And he actually recently recontacted me.
Really?
I bumped into him in the service station in Stransham, just out of the blue, after getting back from Ecuador. Anyway, mad story. But it just shows you how close it came in Bristol. Had I stayed there, I probably would have ended up dead. So I left at the right time, I think. So going back to Ecuador and all that. So an old contact in Newport had been ringing me up and asking me, can you get coke, kilos of? And I said, look, I'm trying to set this up because, someone trusted. Give me the money, I'll go up and I'll meet this Colombian and this Chilean guy, and I'll see what they're like. First time I'll go up and I'll just buy a key of coke, see if they're the right fit. I'm not going to tell them really what the plan is initially. So we'll just have a chat. So I go out, meet them, buy a key of coke. Coke's pure, but in powder form. So take it away, happy days. And I said to the guy in Wales, I said, look, they seem all right. I said, look, will you back us? Will you put the money up to get this going? Because, he made quite a lot of money through me by this point. And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I go back up to London with money for another kilo of coke about a week later. And on this occasion, I said to the Colombian and Chilean, I said, look, guys, I said, the real reason I'm here is because I want to start bringing coke into the country. It's, it's small in volume, high in value, and I want to impregnate it in rubber or plastic. Do you think you can do that? Have you got the capacity to do that? Or have you got people over there that can do it? And they said, and it was like one of those destiny moments. I don't know whether you believe in destiny or not, but I think I certainly do. Because they said to me, we're already doing it. We're bringing it into the country, impregnated in rubber or latex, in the ground sheets of tents. And I was like, well, that's basically the idea that I had anyway. They said, we're only doing it on a small scale at the moment. what can you bring to the table? And I said, well, look, I can get passengers, because they were struggling for passengers, basically.
What, mules?
Yeah, mules. Yeah. So I said, I can get mules. I've got finance. I can bring 30, 40, 50 grand to the table so we can upscale the operation.
Yeah.
I've got people that we can just sell it all to in one go, so we don't have to be selling it to loads of people. So so
wholesale straight away.
Yeah, wholesale. So the least number of people know what we're doing, the better. So they were like, great, let's form a partnership. So the three of us formed a partnership, laid down some ground rules, one of which was, when we're working, no drugs, no alcohol, no women, no partying. After we've done and dusted, all well and good, do what you want. But whilst, like, for a week or two before, and certainly during, absolutely nothing, because we have to be clear-headed whilst we're doing this. And they were like, yeah, fine. We each had our individual sort of roles in the organisation. Mine was, like I said, finding mules, getting airline tickets, logistics, stuff like that. The Chileans was getting chemicals, finding a location for the lab, because we had to extract the cocaine from the rubber when we got it back into the country. So that was his role. Obviously, the Colombian was the conduit for the drugs, because he was from the Cali cartel.
Were you testing it? Would you know if there was cocaine here, whether it was 100%, 80, 60?
I was around it so often that I could literally rub it between my fingers and see how oily it was. Because if there's any resistance, it's cut. Yeah, it should be like butter, or very oily. Yeah. Smell it. If it's got the right smells, like salt and vinegar almost. If it's got that sort of smell, or ether. If it's an ether wash, then you've got really good stuff. That's Bolivian. But it's so difficult for them to get those chemicals nowadays. They're using all sorts of other chemicals. The cocaine you get nowadays is not the same cocaine you got then.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's made differently, different chemicals. And I'm sure they're cutting it. I'm sure they're putting in like a 10% cut at source.
At source.
You think on 1,000 kilos, on a ton, and I mean, they're making like, 10 tons at a time. You add in 10%, that's an extra 100 kilos on a ton. Yeah. On 1,000. Yeah. Like, that's a lot of extra.
It's a lot.
And it doesn't really affect the quality that much.
Yeah.
So.
How long were you doing this for before you got clobbered?
It wasn't long. It was like 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
And we would try and do one a month. Sometimes we'd get two on the same plane.
Okay. So how much would you pay a mule to go out there, collect it, bring it back?
We pay them 10 grand. We cover all their, between 10 and between 10 and 12,000 pounds. Yeah. Irrelevant of whether or not it was 1 kilo or 5 kilos. Okay. 5 kilos was normally about the maximum because of the surface area
and the weight.
Yeah, and the weight and all of that.
Did you ever get in trouble where you were carrying too much weight at any time?
I did the first run.
Did you do the first one?
Yeah.
Did you?
Because I didn't want to start sending people to do something that's
guesswork. You need to know yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to go out. I wanted to see how it all works. Yeah. Madness really. Yeah. But being the adrenaline junkie that I was, I thought, solid. And I thought on the first one, there's very little chance of us getting nigged because it's the first time we're doing it and no one's going to know. So it's only when people start finding out and talking and blah, 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 that the law find out. Because for a fact, 90% of their arrests are information-led, if not more. So I thought, I'll go out to Ecuador. I've always wanted to go there anyway. Not so much nowadays. No. But, do the tourist thing and collect the tent, the first one, which was 5 kilos. And I got there, totally forgot about the luggage allowance. So going into the country, it was like 30 kilos. Yeah. Something like a 14-hour flight, 16-hour flight, KLM flight via Holland. Hell of a long flight. Anyway, land in Quito and buy an Ecuadorian telephone because they didn't want to be phoning backwards and forwards to London. So I phoned from a public telephone box, Cabina, because they got them all over the place over there. So I phoned the guys back in London, gave them the number of the Ecuadorian telephone. So give that to the Colombian. tell him when he gets to Colombia, down to Ecuador, to ring me on the Ecuadorian telephone from a cabina. So we did all that for, to try and be secure.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I've been going around buying gifts for my family, like leather jackets.
Like cover-ups?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But totally forgetting about the luggage allowance, the weight, ceramic plates. Just boxes of cigars, just all sorts of tons of stuff. Yeah. Having a whale of a time. But I'm also doing tourist stuff. I went to Cotopaxi volcano and
was all this just a waste of time, or was this like to say I've been?
That was my cover story.
If you did get club, the cover story is
that was
okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here for tourism.
Okay. So how long were you out there at that time before you brought it back? 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And when you brought it back through Ecuador, was it easy? The airport of Ecuador, and how nervous was it? Did it go to Amsterdam or Holland, and then Holland back to London?
So. You won't believe this, but anyway, I get to the airport in Quito,
in Ecuador,
yeah. And I'm the tent that they've prepared is a 10-man tent. It was massive, weighed about 30 or 40 kilos on its own. With all the poles and all the rest of it, it was huge. So just to make sure the coat was even in there, because they could have been giving me a dummy, I made him cut open a very small corner of the ground sheet, and he pulled out a piece of rubber and chewed it, made my mouth go numb, so I knew it was in there. Yeah. It was like the man from Del Monte. He says, but he couldn't say yes because he couldn't talk. So I kept back to the airport, and it was all a bit sketchy, collating the tent. There was a gun hanging on the back of the door, and it was all at night. It was all, scary stuff.
Yeah. So you say scary stuff, you're quite a ballsy character, right? I can see that. At the time, did you feel like you were a ballsy character? Did you feel you were untouchable?
I've never felt like that. I've just
done it.
Yeah, just quite calm in situations. Yeah. I think having seen all that death, kind of, even in those situations, I'm always very calm, very.
So as you're going through customs Ecuador,
so I get to Ecuador to the airport with this 10-man tent, all these gifts. They put it on the luggage conveyor belt, weigh it, and I'm like about 80 100 kilos over luggage allowance, and they're like, right, you've got to get rid of some weight or pay a huge excess. And I couldn't pay the excess for some stupid reason. Didn't have enough money on me or something, I can't remember. So there's me in front of the KLM staff giving away all these brand new gifts I bought for my family to people that are working in the restaurants and the shops in the airport. And they must have thought, what the fuck is this guy on? And they said, why don't you get rid of that tent? And I'm like, because I can't really. So obviously the flags have gone ding, ding, ding. Alarm bells have gone off everywhere. I arrive in Holland at Schiphol, and I'm at the back of the queue, and there's a row of drug enforcement agents, plainclothes police, and all the passengers are having to file through this row of police. And I see one of them look down the line, and I'm at the back of the queue, and he sees me, turns to his friend, says something in Dutch, and they all look at me, and I thought, right, I'm getting stopped again. So I get to the front of the queue, and he's like, right, you got to come with us. They put me in a holding cell with about 30 other people, about 3 Europeans, all the rest South American. And I'm like, oh God, here we go again. I thought, there's no way I'm getting through this time. It must have, the dog must have detected it or something. But the great thing about the system we were using was it couldn't be detected by X-ray or scanner or dog, apparently. So it was pretty infallible. So anyway, my turn comes for the interview. So they get me in the room and they say, what have you been doing? I say, lay out all the brochures. I say, I've been there, been to that volcano, we've been, just done all this stuff. And they'll, grilled me for like 20 or 30 minutes. And I was thinking any minute now, they're just going to pull out that great big 10-man tent and plonk it down the table and go, what's this? And it didn't happen. And I was just waiting for the moment. And after 20 or 30 minutes and all these questions, they said, oh, sorry to have kept you. You're free to go. And I was like, again?
Result.
I was like, and I thought, surely they must know that I've got drugs. They must know it's there. So in my head, I'm thinking they've contacted the British police and they're going to have me arrested in Britain for some reason. This is what's going through my head. And the connecting flight was to Stansted. So get on the plane, it's only a short, I mean, the plane hardly goes up in the sky before it's dropped down again. And what saved me was, because I was in transit, the tent was in the hold of the plane, so it's gone from one plane straight to the next. So I landed in Stansted, get to the luggage carousel, and there's the tent going round and round, and I'm thinking, shall I? Thinking, as soon as I touch that, I'm going to get mobbed.
Yeah.
And I think, oh, fuck it. Do you know what I mean? Just grabbed it. Nothing happened. So I jack it on the trolley, straight through the Green Channel out. And I'm out. And I'm like, I'm back. I'm free. I've done it. And the adrenaline hit coming out of Dover was huge. Yeah. Coming through this time was massive but it just proved to me how good our system was. I'd got through the Ecuadorian customs. I'd been stopped by the Dutch and got through the British customs. But having been stopped in Holland, I started thinking, why was it that they did the drug search there? I thought, surely, I would have been searched in Britain. So I did a bit of research, and at the time, because we were part of the European Union and part of the Schengen Agreement, the law is whichever country the plane lands in first have the responsibility of doing the drug search on the passengers. So that was a really useful piece of information for us, because we then knew that as long as we got past that first point of entry into Europe, we were pretty much home and dry. So quite often after that, having found passengers to go, basically I contacted a friend of mine it was one of my first guys I dealt with when I was a kid, one of my stepbrother's friends, and he was up for it. Obviously I trusted him, and he said, look, I can find other people after this. So that got the ball rolling. So
how many runs were you doing back and forward? How many mules had you sent each time to bring back?
We tried to do at least one a month. Sometimes we do two on the same plane.
Okay.
But we were also not only doing our own stuff. We would, because other people would bring stuff in using the same method. Some by post, some with people. So what we would do is quite often we would buy their parcels often.
Yeah.
To save them all the hassle of having to set up a lab, extract it, because it was a bit of a ball ache. You having to find a location for it, get all the chemicals.
Where did you have your location where you would extract the cocaine, and how long did it take to extract that amount of cocaine?
Normally it would take about 3 days.
Okay.
Because you'd have to, first of all, the impregnation method was, in South America, you could get liquid latex, which is used for medical processes like artificial skin and stuff like that. So they'd mix it into that by putting it into a solution. I won't go into too much detail. They then let it dry, so you had really thin panels or strips of latex, and then they put it into the ground sheet of the tent, so it looked like it was a part of the fabric of the tent. So we'd have to strip these out, cut them up as small as possible to maximize the surface area, so that the alcohol could bring the cocaine back out into solution. So once it was in solution, because the alcohol was clear, so you'd see it change colour to like the colour of petrol, and you'd know that once that happened, after about 24 hours, the cocaine was in solution. Yeah. And then we would filter it using activated carbon and various other stuff, add some other chemicals, and then we would boil all that down using non-stick woks for your stir fry for Friday night. And for when we found locations, one of the stipulations was we'd have to have a really powerful cooker hood, extractor fan over the cooker, and no gas because of the fumes, highly explosive. Yeah. So all electric. Obviously, nobody was allowed to smoke whilst it was going on and stuff like that. So then we'd boil it all down. You'd see it get to a paste, then you turn the heat right down, and it would just turn to powder. And the people that we were only selling to like 2 or 3 people at this point, because that's all we needed.
Yeah.
Didn't need loads of people. Just take it to them, sell it one go, bang, finished. So we would.
What would that $5,000? That $5,000 would convert into how much?
That 5 kilos.
5 kilos would turn it into how much in the UK?
We turned it into, I think it was about 7 kilos.
Okay. And what's that in pound
We were
notes?
selling it at about 25,000.
Okay.
So what's that? $250,000, something like that. We reached making.
So it's $250,000 every time you brought back from Ecuador to the UK.
Yeah. Okay. And we were between the 3 of us. Normally we'd make.
And you were buying that for $30,000.
Yeah.
So you're spending $30,000 to convert it back here for $250,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So normally we'd each make about between 60 and 80,000.
Wow.
Each of us. So big fat holder full of cash.
Yeah.
So it would take ages to count that money, honestly.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare.
First world problems.
But, yeah. But on it was
when was the time then, after 2 years, that you got nicked? Where did you get nicked, and where did you get put in an Ecuadorian prison?
Yeah. So it was all going along quite smoothly, and obviously one of the really strict rules was no one was allowed to know where the lab was.
Yeah.
At all, apart from the people working in there back in England. And I was in Cali at the point that the first lab got hit. It was in Crystal Palace, and I'd sent a mule back from Ecuador. I'd then gone up to Colombia to meet the guy because we were about to upscale things, because we wanted to stop using mules because we knew that was a weak link in the chain. So we wanted to start sending by container, upscale things, make a lot of tents, and just send it by container. A lot safer, a lot easier. Like only 3% of containers get searched coming into Britain.
Bigger numbers.
Yeah, a lot bigger numbers. So we were looking at 100 kilos, doing 100 kilos. So I was there. It was basically to organise that.
Why did you pick Ecuador, not Peru, not Colombia, not?
We picked Ecuador on the first one. We used Venezuela as well.
Yeah.
Primarily because
it's not a hot spot like Colombia.
It wasn't at the time.
Okay.
It was, it was kind of a tourist destination. They still don't really grow cocaine there. They manufacture it there. They process it there on the border with Peru or the border with Colombia. They have a lot of labs in those areas. Yeah. But also the guy from Cali, and Cali's in the south of Colombia and not far from Quito. So he had quite a strong network already in Quito and had a safe house there. So that's why we chose Ecuador as the first one. We used Venezuela quite a few times after because we knew the systems there. I mean, it was knackered basically. Yeah. So that was quite.
Were you
easy.
paying off any customs at all?
No,
you didn't need to.
We did think about it, and we were offered it several times. But I said to the guys, I said, look, the system that we've got is so good that why let somebody know? Yeah. Because you know that if it goes wrong, they're going to open their mouth straight away and grass everybody up. So let's not involve them. After that first experience of getting stopped in Holland, I had that much confidence in our system that I said, it's just a waste of money, and it's just letting them know. It's just putting them.
Where did you get nicked?
So, when that first lab got busted in Crystal Palace, what had happened was the Colombian and the Chilean were in there, but they were in there with their mates partying, doing coke, music, cars coming, dealing out of it. I was in Cali organising this upscale, and all the phones went dead. And I was like, oh, fucking hell. So after a day or two, we found out they'd all been nicked. And the Colombian got flipped by the police, became a police informant, got released after 6 months, came out with some excuse. People are saying, watch him, we think he's an informant. And, I'm not going to go into it.
Did you sense he was a grass?
Yeah.
There was a point.
Because he was asking all the wrong questions and stuff. And we did discuss killing him.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
We were talking about taking him out.
Yeah.
But there's so much more about this story. We had a corrupt police officer in London who started giving us the surveillance notes, because we found out, we knew we were under surveillance by now.
So you were bunging that copper to give you information?
Well, via a third party again.
Okay.
I didn't know him directly.
Yeah.
I've got a good idea of who he was because he later got nicked, I'm pretty sure. He was very high ranking in the Met. And I put him on a weekly retainer, basically. And he could get so far into the system, and he was supplying us with all the surveillance notes. So there's 7 primary people in our operation were under 24-hour surveillance, and I started sensing it.
Yeah.
I started seeing movements, people, cars, same faces over and over. Just you know.
Yeah.
And I was so paranoid anyway after this Colombian getting released that I was so on. And like I said, we wouldn't talk on the phones in a car, any built structure. So
isn't that funny how you were looking after Met office, Met policeman who was high up in the Met and bunging him on a weekly retainer?
How's that funny?
No, it's not. What I'm saying, it's funny how he's accepted.
Yeah.
It just goes to show how corrupt the Met police can be.
Yeah, well, still are to some extent, I'm sure. Well, I mean, we know.
So when your lab got
so it gets nicked. So they all got nicked. The Colombian gets released. So carry on working with him, but by this point I'm also working with one of our chemists who's also a Colombian. So I'm feeding the informant that Colombian misinformation to confuse, muddy the waters. Yeah. So trying to confuse things, but carrying on. So I'm still bringing stuff in with him, and it just turns into a mad game of cat and mouse, which to me, again, going back to playing chess and all that, it's like outsmarting the system. It kind of appealed to me in a real warped way.
Yeah.
But ultimately, again, cutting the story short, we'd brought 2 tents in one go from Venezuela. One was with the informant and the other was with the other chemist. And I told the other chemist, I said, don't let the other Colombian, the informant, know where you're going, because we were going out to Edinburgh, because the guy in Edinburgh had set a place up for us up there, had a lot of property by this point, made a lot of money. And I'd just been using it as a flat for a few months, just so it appears normal. So then the time comes, we activate it, it's now a lab, we get all the equipment in there. And the chemist gets followed from London by the police. He gets trailed up on the train with a woman that he brought with him. I can't remember whether she was family or what. But so they get to work extracting these 2 tents worth of cocaine. And, I didn't really want to be around it, so I'm staying away. I was driving a transit van, white transit van at the time. And I think it was either the first day or the second day of them being there. They phoned me up and they said, look, you should come back to the flat, because it was on the 5th floor. They said, we think we're being watched by the police. There's a car at the back, parked up, and there's a couple in it that keep looking up at the kitchen window. And they were working in the kitchen. So I said, okay, I'll come back and have a look. And sure enough, I had a quick look out, and I thought, yeah, that's definitely the police. So I said, what I'm going to do is, and as I've looked out, they've seen me looking down, and we've watched them move from where they were parked into a car park opposite, to try and blend into the car park so they can carry on watching. But we've seen them do this. So I said, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go down, get in the transit van, drive around, and I'm going to block them in. And face them out and have a look at them. So it was a bit stupid, really, but anyway, did it, and they put on their reverse lights to try and get out. So I've moved the van, let them come out, and then I followed them through Edinburgh for about 10 or 15 minutes, and I phoned the flat back up, and I said to the Colombians, and I said, look, that's definitely the police, it's on top, I'll come back, but we've got to just leave everything, drop everything, leave it, all the kit, all the drugs, and let's go. I'll get you out of there, but we've got to go now. There's no fucking about. Can't wait. We've got to go. And they were like, well, we're not sure. We don't want to lose the drugs, blah, 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 I was like, well, that's up to you. I'll come back to the flat. What I did was I parked the van outside the flat. So I looked as though I was in there, and there was a taxi office right across the road. So I got on a taxi and went to a hotel for the night. And sure enough, next morning, go to phone them. All the phones are off again. And the lab had been busted. Huge. I mean, me following them through the city had triggered the bust, basically. Yeah. So I phoned up my mate who was the landlord, whose property it was. We'd set up false tenancy agreements and all this, so he was covered. Yeah. So I phoned him up and he was like, Jesus Christ, didn't think I was going to see you again for a while. And he said there was a massive raid there last night. They shut the whole area down. Huge operation. And it was big news. It was on Radio 1, 2, 3, 4. It was on ITV News, BBC News. I mean, it was massive. It was a real big deal. It was on the front page of the Scotsman. What did it say? Colombian crack cocaine factory found in Leith. And because there were a few of those samples that I said, the tests that we used to do to see how the finesse thing would bind. So they'd found these tests and they assumed that it was to be made into crack. So the two Colombians have been arrested, but I've swerved it very narrowly. Managed to get back in there because obviously my mate's got the keys, he's the landlord. The door had been obviously smashed through. When I'd left that night and gone to the hotel, I said to them, because it was a big Georgian flat, I said, make sure the door is bolted, all the locks are on it, and it was a big, thick, old, like Victorian oak door. It's a massive, strong door. Apparently it took them about 20 minutes to half an hour to get through the door. So in that time, I think they managed to get rid of a lot of material, but obviously there was the press, a 15-ton floor standing hydraulic press in there. You can't exactly throw that out the window. I get smuggled out of the country by the Turkish mafia in the boot of a Mercedes car.
Mate, you couldn't actually write this.
I know, because obviously they're bringing people in.
Yeah.
So it was a Turkish friend of mine from Swindon. Yeah. It was Turkish mafia. Yeah. But they were bringing in alcohol, cigarettes, probably bringing in people I don't know. Yeah. But I phoned him out. I said, look, can you get me out of the country? I need to go. And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll just jump in the boot of my Mercedes car, put some luggage over you, and we'll go on the hover speed. It's only 45 minutes, if that. Over to France, got through fine, no problem. So get out in France. They bring me over a car because he owed me 10 grand at the time. So they bring me over a ringer on fake plate, English car. So I'm driving around. So I disappeared down to my dad's place. And my dad comes out and I decide to do the one last job. And it was literally going to be the last job. And I decided I was going to fuck the informant for the money. Because I knew he was an informant by this point, flat out. Yeah. So I was having to drive like 30 miles just to use a phone box so that they couldn't trace where I was. And I was saying, I'm up in the Pyrenees and, really giving them the run around. So the plan had been that I was going to go to Ecuador. My girlfriend was coming out to Ecuador. I was going to spend 2 weeks there with her, send the mule back. She was going to go back. I was going to go back to France, then to Thailand and wait for the money to come out. Gone to the hotel and the receptionist was there that I knew. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, have you been to the Galapagos Islands this time? And I'd never been. And she knew that. And I said, no. And she said, well, you really should go now then. And I was like, having had a couple of drinks, my girlfriend's in my left ear, so. And I thought, she's obviously trying to tell me something. It was too late. The hotel was surrounded. The police were already there. Interpol was in there. So I get in the lift up to the top floor, go down the corridor, put the card key in the door, And as soon as I do that, all hell breaks loose. And there's balaclava men running down the corridor with machine guns, handguns out, in plain clothes. I didn't know what was going on, but they're shouting manners and relievers, hands up. I think they had police written across them. But, guns out, full on. And so they get us into the room, go straight to the wardrobe. They'd obviously been in the room whilst we'd been out at dinner. Come out with the tent, go, oh, look what we found, blah, blah, blah. One of them spoke a bit of English. So straight away, I'm like, is there any other way we can do this? I'll give you 25 grand now in cash. Give me a phone, I'll get you another 100 grand in an hour, a couple of hours or whatever. I'll get it sent over. And you can keep the tent. We just forget this never happened. You could say that you just didn't find anything. And he said to me, oh, what do you think? We are corrupt. We're the Ecuadorian police force. I said, are you having a laugh? But of course, because the British were running the operation and overseeing it, they must have been there in the background, or they had some sort of control, so they couldn't do anything. The Colombian, on the other hand, who I'd given cash to, when I got the case papers, they lost in traffic. Yeah, right. They stopped him.
Yeah.
They had a rucksack full of cash. It's not drugs. They had a good payday that day, so they got the drugs.
So when you got nicked, where did you get put? What prison? And how long did you get? Yeah.
So they held us in Interpol, right? And the Interpol police station in Ecuador, in Quito, is right in front of the airport. Which is a real wind-up, because you can hear the planes taking off that you should have been on. Every day you can smell the aviation fuel. Was there 5 weeks, didn't see daylight once. It was horrible. They didn't give you food or water or anything. There was one cold tap in there. So anyway, again, cutting the story short, me and my girlfriend get split up. Obviously I get sent to the men's prison, which was called Garcia Moreno. Which was like an old Victorian prison, same as Wandsworth, built in sort of 1850s. Like with a centre with the wings coming off, exactly like a Victorian prison here. So the British police apparently denied about extraditing me back to Britain, because they knew how corrupt Ecuador was, and they knew already that I was trying to bribe my way out of there. And I was because I knew the police were coming for me when I was in France. I knew it was only a matter of time before they caught up with me. So that's why I wanted to get over there, send that tent back to London, but not to the Colombian. And he wasn't going to get paid. And I was hoping he was going to get killed for me. Yeah. And I was going to disappear to Thailand, see my mates.
How long did you get nicked? How long did you get put in prison for?
So
what was your sentence?
So the British police asked for 25.
25 years,
which was the maximum at the time in Ecuador that you could get for drugs. Well, then, even for murder, that is the maximum sentence in Ecuador, 25 years.
And what did they give you?
So I immediately opened the checkbook and started paying off the judge, because they're all corrupt over there. But the police, the British police actually flew out to Ecuador on a couple of occasions, and on one they sat down in front of me, and they said, if the Colombian turns up dead, because we know he's an informant. If he turns up dead, you're the first person we're going to arrest, because we know you want him dead. Yeah. 6 people ended up dead in the case. The girl that came to Edinburgh with the Colombian, she was found dead in Colombia with a note pinned to her chest about something about being an informant. A few other informants got killed here, there, and a couple in Britain, a couple here, there and there. People ended up dead. So that was the first thing they said. And then they said, if you get sentenced to less than, because they said, well, look, we know you're trying to bribe the judges and trying to pay your way out. They said, if you get sentenced to less than 10 years or serve less than 6, we will extradite you at the end of your sentence. You'll do your sentence here
give
first.
You the same back here.
And then we'll start your sentence at 20 here. It's more likely to be 25 upwards. And and it'll all be high security. You'll be
so you were
carrying.
bringing a lot of cocaine from South America to the UK. Was there ever a number or a price?
The British police said that we had brought in, well, the judge in his summing up said that we had brought in at least 85 kilos of cocaine. But they knew it was a hell of a lot more, but they didn't, they would never know how much. That's it. Those were more or less his exact.
Do you know what the street value of that would be?
They said it was over £4 million at the time.
Yeah.
So, it was probably quite a lot more.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So,
how many years did you serve in Ecuadorian prison?
I actually had, because of what the British police had said, I actually had to tell the judge not to give me less than 10 years.
Yeah, okay.
Which was galling because he was going to give me 8, and then I was going to do an appeal and get 4 and get out after 2. That was the plan, and disappear. Yeah. So he gave me 12, so I got 12 years. So the British police were pretty pissed about that. So just to be spiteful, I managed to get my girlfriend out, paid her out, got her out, 25 grand that cost me. I spent about 125 grand on lawyers and bribes and all the rest of it in total. And I said to her, don't go back to England because they're going to arrest you. And she said, well, why should they? I'm not involved. We weren't even living together. Why should they? I've got a young daughter, or like a youngish daughter. I'm not involved. I haven't done anything. I said, it doesn't matter. They're going to arrest you and they will try and, because I'm not there, they're going to fuck with you, basically. I said, I've got an apartment arranged for you in Barcelona with some friends over there. Go stay there. Just wait. We'll get your daughter brought out and just deal with the case from a distance. Just don't go back to Britain because, she goes back to Britain, gets arrested. She gets 13 years.
She got 13.
And her legal team must have been shit because it was all circumstantial evidence. She never once carried drugs for me.
Did she know what was going on?
She knew I was
up to something.
Yeah,
okay.
What
was it like? What was it like for you? How many years did you get?
I got 12.
You got 12 years. How many years did you do in that prison?
I did 9 years and 3 months. I basically... Because I tried to escape from Quito, I started digging a tunnel out of there. I became friends with some FARC, members of FARC.
What's FARC?
The Colombian guerrilla.
Yeah, okay.
What they call terrorists.
Yeah.
So became very good friends with a group of FARC members. And we had a gun in there for protection and whatnot. So this, that and the other. Pretty much took over the wing that I was on. We bought a cell on B wing
Hold on, you said you bought a cell.
Oh yeah, you buy a cell. You can buy a cell over there. They're about $2,000.
What? So you can choose which cell you want by how much money you got.
Yeah. So I went into a wing that was mainly for foreigners, C wing. So loads of foreigners from all around the world. About 4 or 5 Brits there. Never more than that. And because I've been in prison in Britain, I was actually glad to get arrested in Ecuador and not be arrested in Britain because I knew had I been arrested in Britain, it was going to be hell.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was either going to be able to pay my way out of Ecuador or escape, or, it was going to be easier to get out and I was going to do less time in Ecuador, probably. I never thought I'd do 9 years and 3 months.
So you did 9 years and 3 months in
over there.
Wow, Jesus. Yeah. And how long was it before you said, right, I need to escape?
Oh, bad day.
How did you try to escape? How many attempts did you try to escape? And did you ever get caught?
Yeah. So me and the FARC guys, we were plotting all sorts of different ways. We talked about doing a helicopter lift off the roof, but that was about 80 grand. And that was just a bit too much. We then discussed blowing the wall of the exercise yard on B wing. If you look at photographs of Garcia Moreno, you'll see it was only one concrete block thick. So easy to blow with an RPG.
Yeah.
So they were going to get their mates down with the RPG, lay down firing cover to the 2 gun turrets, where the police are. Yeah. Blow a hole in the wall, have a mass escape. So that was one plot. We nearly did that. But we opted to dig a tunnel out of B Wing because the end of B Wing, which was mainly Ecuadorians in there, was right against the exterior wall, so you didn't have to go far.
Yeah.
So we bought the penultimate cell on the right, and because in there you could get building materials. When I bought a cell, my cell, I ended up buying 5 cells because I was renting them out as well for visit days. Because visit days were all day Wednesday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. Every other weekend, you could have your girlfriend come in and stay the night. She'd come in Saturday morning, leave on Sunday evening.
So it's a free for all in there.
Pretty much.
Who was in charge? Who was in charge? With the actual gate?
The guards were in Quito. The guards were in charge to a certain extent. They'd lock you in your cell at 9 o'clock at night. Get opened at 8 in the morning. But in the daytime, you could go to other wings. You could pay to go where you wanted. Really, just bribe a guard. You could get whatever you wanted brought in. You could get shopping brought in. You had money in there. Like I say, we had a gun. Everybody had machetes. And when it went bad quick. I mean, they were pretty. I mean, within a day of being there, I got introduced to someone that in the next day he got shot dead.
Wow.
And hung and stabbed. And they called it suicide.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty mental.
Were you okay in there?
How do you mean?
Like when you were there, when you arrived and you got all these
South
Americans everywhere.
Well, no, because I went in Quito, it was a little bit calmer. And like I say, when I was in Interpol, I became friendly with a bunch of one was, I think they were Syrian and Lebanese.
Libyan or Lebanese, okay.
Yeah, the guys that are fighting the Israelis at the moment.
Okay, yeah.
Palestinians and all that lot. And they'd been sending cocaine back to Israel, selling it, buying weapons for Hezbollah and Hamas. So they're, proper terrorists. Yeah. But I became really friendly with them because they spoke English. I contracted their lawyer, so I had the same lawyer as them. And we all got moved together into the prison, and one of their friends was running the wing. Yeah. An Egyptian guy. And after him, another one of their friends is Syrian. So anyway, the Syrian guy I didn't get on very well with, so I painted a Union Jack on the back of my door. So when you opened the door, you had a huge Union Jack there. That really pissed him off. I thought representing Britain. So,
how quickly did your 9 years go?
This is the thing in Quito. So I did my cell up, like I said, I painted that Union Jack. But not only did I do that, I had the whole cell refurbed. Yeah. I had black porcelain tiles put in there. I had it made up real nice. I had it replastered, rewired. I had a TV in there, fridge, new mattresses. When we used to get raided by the police would come in and say, "You're living better than we are." Yeah, I mean, it used to piss them off. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Fridge in there, cooker, electric shower, everything. Some of the guys had satellite TVs. A really surreal moment was watching Cheltenham Town playing football while sat in prison in Ecuador. Cheltenham Town's like local to me. Yeah. And I'm sat there looking at Cheltenham going, this is really weird.
Did you have anyone, your family, come and visit you?
No, no. My mum was, like I said, she was an alcoholic and not well. And I thought it would kill her, the stress of it.
Was there ever a time in prison when you thought, I could lose my life?
Oh, yeah. That was one of the worst things. After 2 years, Quito wasn't so bad, but when I arrived there, all of the laws, like things like parole, early release, and anything like that, anything that benefited the prisoners, all of it was suspended. So there was no remission. Okay. So when they said you're going to get 25 years, I nearly fainted. I saw the document from the British police because I would have had to have done 23 out of 25. All the way through, that was in the back of my mind as well. So not only was the worry of surviving every day there, but every day I was thinking about that. And half my family died whilst I was there. My mum died, my auntie, my cousin. So many of my friends died whilst I was there, got killed there. It was just a horrendous place to be. Wouldn't recommend it.
No, I wouldn't recommend that whatsoever. Pete, this has been a fascinating, what an eventful life.
But check out my book.
Yeah, I was just about to say, where can people find your book?
It's on Amazon. It's called El Infierno. Or the Inferno.
The Inferno.
I'm in the middle of. I keep saying that, but I am in the middle of writing the prequel, which will be even crazier because the El Infierno is mainly about the prison time.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are some crazy stories in there, and I would recommend it. It's well worth it.
And anyone can find that on Amazon.
Amazon.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah, bookshops.
Pete, what a wild life! I'm literally blown away. Like, such an unassuming person.
So many people say.
I know, but if I saw you in the street and I met you for a pint, I was, hello, mate, got chatted. And if you'd have told me this, I'd think you're making it all up. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy. Pete, I really do appreciate you coming down here.
Yeah, thanks.
And doing the podcast.
No worries.
Fascinating life. Anyone out there, go and check out his book. And he also did a Banged Up Abroad on his life as well.
Banged Up Abroad. I forgot that.
Go and check out Banged Up Abroad as well. Pete.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you so much. Yeah, wild life. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
That's a wild. You can't write that. You can't write that, Pete. Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Can you do us a favour and subscribe to the channel? It's totally free and it massively helps our show. Cheers guys.